The wind howled across the small train depot, whipping snow into drifts that piled against the weathered wooden walls. Inside, the young teacher, Clara Bennett, sat shivering on a narrow bench. Her books and satchel lay beside her, damp from the sleet she had trudged through to reach the station. The depot was quiet, save for the occasional squeak of the heater and the distant rumble of a freight train. Clara pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders. She had expected warmth, a train waiting, someone to meet her. But the night had become a ghostly silence, punctuated only by the cold bite of the winter wind. She had been traveling to the small town of Silver Creek, eager to start her first teaching post. The letters from the school board had been clear: arrive before Christmas, settle in, and be ready for the first term. Clara had dreamed of this for months, the opportunity to teach children, to carve a life for herself far from the bustling city streets she had left behind. But now, abandoned in a deserted station with nothing but a flickering oil lamp for company, those dreams felt fragile, like snowflakes melting in her hands. She looked out the frost-covered window at the empty tracks, wondering if she had taken a wrong turn, or if fate had simply deserted her. Hours passed. The depot remained empty. The trains had stopped running for the night, and Clara began to accept that she would spend Christmas Eve alone. She unpacked her small blanket and curled against the wall, her breath fogging in the icy air. "Why tonight?" she whispered to the silent station, her voice trembling. "Why does it always feel like no one is here when you need them most?" The shadows of the depot seemed to stretch toward her, looming against the walls like the echoes of forgotten travelers. Clara pressed her knees to her chest, letting out a shivering sigh. The city had promised opportunity. The country had promised adventure. Instead, she had been left with the stillness, the snow, and the relentless cold. Her eyelids grew heavy. Outside, the wind rattled the doors, and Clara imagined it carrying voices, friends, family, even strangers, people who would have offered warmth and kindness. She closed her eyes, willing herself to sleep, to dream of a place where she was safe, where she belonged. Somewhere in the distance, a horse whinnied. Clara stirred, lifting her head, straining to hear over the wind. Her pulse quickened, hope fluttering faintly in her chest. Could it be someone coming to check the depot? A traveler lost in the storm? The sound passed, leaving only silence again. Clara pressed her blanket closer, shivering, uncertain if she had imagined the noise. She had never felt so small, so exposed, so utterly alone. And yet, even in that loneliness, a spark of determination lingered. She would survive this night. She would endure the cold. She would greet the dawn, even if no one was waiting for her on the other side. But as the hours stretched and the storm raged, something, or someone, was coming through the snow. And Clara had no idea her life was about to change forever. "If you are still with me, friend, hit the red button and let's lock in for the rest of the journey. Go get your favorite snack and beverage, we're here for a while. Connecting with you all is the best part. Tell me what time it is for you and which country you're listening from below." The wind shrieked like a wild animal, carrying snow in blinding sheets across the darkened tracks. Clara Bennett hugged her blanket tighter, her teeth chattering despite the thick coat she wore. Her body ached from sitting on the hard wooden bench for hours, and each gust of wind that slipped through the cracks of the depot made her feel smaller, colder, more vulnerable. Then, faintly at first, she heard it, the soft crunch of hooves in the snow. Her heart leapt. She sat up, pressing her hands against her knees, straining her eyes against the storm. At first, it was just a shadow, dim and wavering in the falling snow. But soon, a figure emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, and wrapped in a heavy, dust-streaked coat, with a wide-brimmed hat pulled low to shield his face. The stranger approached carefully, his horse's breath visible in the cold air. Clara's instinct was to shrink back, to curl into herself like the frightened child she felt she had become. But there was something about the man's deliberate, calm movements, an aura of quiet strength, that made her pause. "Evening," he called over the wind, his voice deep but gentle. "Are you all right?" Clara's lips parted, and she wanted to say yes, but the words froze. Instead, she nodded. I'm fine," she managed to whisper. The stranger dismounted, setting the reins carefully. He moved with a purpose, bringing a small lantern from his saddlebag and holding it up, casting warm light across the depot's frozen walls. The glow revealed Clara's pale, shivering face, framed by dark curls damp with sleet. "Looks like you've had a rough night," the man said softly. "You shouldn't be out here alone." Clara's throat tightened. I was supposed to meet someone. A train, a friend? Her voice broke, but no one came. The man's gaze softened. Seems the snow had other plans. He offered her a thick wool blanket. Clara hesitated, but the warmth and the smell of leather and earth were irresistible. She accepted it, wrapping herself as tightly as possible. "Name's Daniel," the man said, tipping his hat slightly. "I own a ranch not far from here. Thought I'd check the depot, couldn't imagine anyone being left out here tonight." Clara's eyes filled with tears, though she blinked rapidly to hide them. Clara Bennett," she replied. "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come." Daniel shook his head. "You'd have made it through. But don't have to, not tonight. Come on, my horse will take you somewhere warm." The warmth from the lantern, the strength of his presence, and the kindness in his voice made Clara feel something she hadn't felt in days: hope. She rose slowly, legs stiff from hours of cold, and stepped toward him. As Daniel lifted her onto the horse behind him, the snowstorm seemed less threatening. The depot, the loneliness, the endless night, they felt distant, as if the storm itself was giving way to something gentler. For the first time that evening, Clara allowed herself to believe, perhaps she would survive this night. Perhaps she would see warmth again. Perhaps, just perhaps, Christmas had not abandoned her after all. And as they rode into the white wilderness, the distant lights of a ranch began to glow through the storm, promising shelter, comfort, and the start of something neither of them could yet imagine. The ride through the storm was quiet. The only sounds were the crunch of hooves in the snow and the soft patter of wind against the horse's mane. Clara clung tightly to Daniel, her body pressed against his back for warmth, and the rhythmic motion lulled some of her tension away. The ranch appeared suddenly, lights glimmering like a promise through the blizzard. Smoke spiraled from the chimney into the night sky, and Clara felt her chest tighten with relief. The sight of a home, a fire, a place that wasn't just cold wood and empty silence, made her heart race with hope. Daniel guided the horse toward the wide wooden gate, swinging it open with ease. "Almost there," he said. "Just a few more steps." The barn loomed to one side, sturdy and welcoming. The main house stood beyond it, snow-dusted and inviting. Warm light spilled from the windows, revealing curtains that fluttered in the draft. Clara could smell the aroma of something cooking, bread or stew, perhaps, and her stomach grumbled. Daniel dismounted first, helping Clara to the ground. Her legs trembled, stiff from the cold and the long ride. He offered her his hand, and she took it, stepping onto the packed snow with careful gratitude. "You'll be safe here," Daniel said. His tone was gentle but firm. "And warm." Clara nodded, unable to find words. Her lips moved, but nothing came. The enormity of being rescued, the shift from fear to safety, pressed too heavily on her chest. He led her to the house and opened the door. Warm air, scented with pine and something sweet, rushed to meet her. Clara shivered once, then took a deep breath, letting it fill her lungs. It was the first breath she had taken in hours that didn't sting with cold. "Sit by the fire," Daniel said, motioning to a chair near the hearth. Clara sank into it gratefully. Her fingers stretched toward the warmth, feeling the heat seep into her frozen skin. "I'll get you something to eat," he added. His movements were confident and calm, yet careful, like someone accustomed to taking care of others without making them feel weak. Clara let her gaze wander. The interior of the ranch house was simple, rustic, but cozy. Wooden beams crisscrossed the ceiling, and shelves lined with jars, books, and trinkets gave it life. A small Christmas tree, modest but sparkling with candles and decorations, sat in the corner. Her heart lifted, and tears pricked her eyes again, not from fear this time, but from a mixture of awe and relief. Daniel returned with a plate of warm bread and stew. "Eat," he said. "You need your strength." Clara nodded, finally finding her voice. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't have to," Daniel said simply. "Just rest. That's enough for tonight." She nodded, swallowing a bite. The warmth of the fire, the food, the quiet assurance in Daniel's presence, it all felt surreal. For the first time since arriving at the depot, Clara felt a spark of hope that the night could end not in despair, but in comfort. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the ranch in white. Inside, a new story had begun, one of safety, kindness, and the quiet promise that even on the loneliest Christmas night, someone could find you when you needed it most. Clara sat close to the fire, letting the warmth seep through her frozen limbs. Each flicker of flame chased away the numbness in her fingers and toes, yet it couldn't fully erase the memory of the depot, the emptiness, and the storm. Daniel moved around the room with quiet efficiency, placing a steaming mug of tea on the table before her. "Drink this," he said. "It'll help warm you up from the inside." Clara accepted it, wrapping her hands around the cup. The heat radiated through her, melting the tension she hadn't realized was lodged in her shoulders. She took a careful sip, savoring the warmth, the faint sweetness of the tea, and the sense of safety surrounding her. "Do you live here alone?" she asked hesitantly, afraid to break the quiet peace that had settled over the room. Daniel paused, considering. "Mostly," he admitted. "I have a few ranch hands, but it's quiet this time of year. Most people don't travel in the snow." Clara nodded, understanding the solitude. She herself had grown accustomed to independence, but tonight had shown her how fragile that strength could be in the face of the storm. She began, unsure how to continue. "I never thought anyone would find me." Daniel gave her a reassuring smile. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last. The winter has a way of teaching us humility." Clara laughed softly, a sound that had been missing for hours, maybe days. It was tentative but real, and Daniel's eyes softened. "You're a teacher," he said, observing her. "I can tell. The way you carry yourself, the way you notice details, even in a storm, you keep hope alive." She felt her cheeks warm, both from the fire and the unexpected compliment. I want to make a difference," she admitted. "But tonight made me question if I even had the strength to make it on my own." Daniel shook his head. "Strength isn't always about surviving alone. Sometimes it's about letting someone help you. That's what tonight is." Outside, the wind battered the roof and rattled the windows, but inside, Clara felt a peace she hadn't known in a long time. For the first time, the storm didn't feel like an enemy. It was a backdrop to the quiet warmth and kindness she had found here. Daniel poured himself a cup of tea and sat across from her, letting the silence linger. He didn't force conversation, but his presence was steady, comforting. Clara gazed into the fire, thinking about the depot, the long, lonely hours, and the sudden arrival of this man who had changed the course of her night. A spark of gratitude, and something deeper, kindled in her chest. I think I might actually be okay tonight," she said softly. Daniel nodded. "You will be. We'll see that you're safe and warm. That's what matters right now." As the flames danced and the snow continued to fall outside, Clara sipped her tea, letting the warmth, the quiet, and the unexpected kindness of a stranger fill the emptiness she hadn't realized she carried. For the first time that Christmas night, she allowed herself to believe that hope could survive the cold. The snowstorm outside softened as the night wore on, though the wind still whispered through the trees. Inside, the warmth of the fire wrapped around Clara like a comforting cloak. She sat with her tea, the steam curling upward, and finally allowed herself to relax. Daniel leaned back in his chair, watching her quietly. "You've had a long night," he said. "Would you like to talk? Or would you prefer silence?" Clara hesitated, then shook her head. I think talking might help." Her voice was low, almost fragile, but steady. "It's strange. I've taught children before, guided them, been the one people relied on, but tonight, I felt utterly helpless." Daniel nodded. "It happens to all of us. Even the strongest sometimes need someone to guide them." She smiled faintly. "I never thought a stranger could make such a difference in just a few hours." Daniel shrugged. "It's the little acts that matter most. Helping someone through a storm, offering warmth, a meal, a safe place. That's more powerful than most realize." Clara's gaze wandered to the fire, the flickering flames reflecting in her eyes. "I've always dreamed of teaching in a small town," she said softly. "The children, the sense of purpose, it's all I've wanted. But tonight made me realize how easily things can go wrong." "Life has a way of testing us," Daniel replied. "It's not always the snow or the storm, it's the moments that catch us off guard, the times we feel abandoned. But that's when we learn who we are." Clara nodded, feeling a strange sense of kinship with this rugged rancher. His life, she realized, must be full of hardships she could hardly imagine, yet there was a quiet strength about him that made her feel safe. "I don't know why I was abandoned tonight," she murmured. "But I do know one thing. Being here, seeing your home, feeling your kindness, it's given me hope." Daniel smiled, a flicker of warmth in his eyes. "That's all I wanted. For you to be safe. And maybe," he said with a hint of humor, "for you to stay warm long enough to start trusting the world again." Clara laughed softly, a sound she hadn't realized she'd missed hearing. "I think I might be able to sleep tonight," she said, glancing at the small guest room Daniel had prepared for her. "Good," he replied. "Rest well. Tomorrow is Christmas, and there's much to do. I'll make sure you have a proper breakfast." As she settled into the guest room, Clara's mind wandered. The depot, the hours of waiting, the biting cold, all of it felt distant now, almost like a dream. She realized how fleeting safety could be, and how profound the impact of kindness might become. Before closing her eyes, she whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude, not just for the warmth, the food, or the shelter, but for the unexpected generosity of a stranger who had walked through the storm and changed her night, perhaps even her life. Outside, the wind had begun to die down, leaving only the soft hush of falling snow. Inside, the fire crackled softly, and Clara drifted into a peaceful sleep, unaware that this night, this Christmas Eve, was only the beginning of a story she would never forget. Clara awoke to the soft glow of sunlight filtering through frost-laced windows. The room was warm, the fire still glowing in the hearth, and for a moment she allowed herself to linger in the comfort. Outside, the snow stretched endlessly, sparkling in the early morning light. She dressed quickly and descended the wooden stairs, drawn by the smell of something sweet and baking. Daniel was already in the kitchen, moving with ease between pots and pans, his rugged frame familiar and reassuring in the soft light. "Good morning," he said, glancing up with a smile. "Sleep well?" Clara nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Better than I have in days." "Good," he replied, handing her a plate with warm bread and honey. "Breakfast. Eat as much as you like. It's Christmas." Clara sat by the fire and took a bite. The bread was warm, the honey sweet, and the simple act of eating a proper meal after her long ordeal felt almost miraculous. She felt a twinge of guilt for the emptiness of the depot, for how helpless she had been, but Daniel's presence reminded her that kindness could arrive when least expected. After breakfast, Daniel led her outside. The ranch stretched before her, covered in snow, the fence lines crisp and defined, the barns sturdy and welcoming. Horses pawed at the ground, their breath visible in the cold air. "Would you like to see the stables?" Daniel asked. "There's work to do, even on Christmas, but it's peaceful." Clara nodded eagerly. Despite her shyness, curiosity overcame hesitation. She followed him to the stables, feeling the snow crunch beneath her boots. Inside, the horses moved quietly, their eyes soft and intelligent. Daniel handed her a brush. "Go ahead, give this one a good rub down." She hesitated, then brushed the horse's coat, feeling the warmth beneath her hands. The rhythmic motion, the connection with the animal, was grounding. She realized she hadn't felt this sense of control or peace in weeks. As she worked, Daniel watched from nearby, leaning against the post, his expression unreadable yet gentle. "You know," he said, breaking the silence, "life can be harsh. It can leave you abandoned, cold, alone, but sometimes it also brings unexpected grace." Clara looked up at him. I believe that now." "You have courage," he continued. "Even in the depot tonight, you survived. And now, here, you're finding warmth, safety, and a new start. That's not luck, that's resilience." Clara's cheeks flushed with warmth, partly from the cold, partly from his words. She felt gratitude swell in her chest, a mixture of relief, awe, and a budding admiration for the man who had rescued her. For the first time in days, the weight of fear lifted. She realized that this Christmas morning wasn't just a gift of warmth or shelter, it was the beginning of something larger, trust, connection, and perhaps, a life she hadn't yet imagined. And as snowflakes continued to fall gently on the ranch, Clara felt the promise of Christmas stretch beyond a single night, a promise that maybe, just maybe, she had finally found a place to belong. The morning settled into afternoon, the winter sun casting a soft glow over the ranch. Clara had spent the hours helping Daniel with small tasks, feeding the horses, stacking firewood, and tending to the garden where winter crops persisted beneath the snow. Each task, though simple, filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since leaving the city. Daniel observed her quietly, stepping in only when her small frame struggled against a heavy log or when the snow made a task slippery. He spoke sparingly, letting her confidence grow with each successful effort. "You're learning quickly," he said finally, wiping sweat from his brow despite the cold. Clara smiled, cheeks flushed. "I have a good teacher." Daniel chuckled softly, a sound that seemed to harmonize with the rustling of the pine trees around them. "I hope you don't mind a little hard work." "Not at all," Clara replied. "It's nice to do something tangible, to see results right away. I've spent so long in classrooms and papers and books that I forgot what it feels like to build, to care for things with my own hands." Daniel nodded, understanding. "The land has a way of reminding you. It doesn't lie. It rewards effort and patience. And it teaches humility." They paused near the barn, the horses now calm and settled. Clara noticed how Daniel's gaze lingered on the horizon, as if reading the mountains like a map. She realized that, despite his rugged exterior, there was a quiet vulnerability to him, a carefulness that only showed when he was sure someone was watching closely, or not at all. "Do you live here alone?" she asked, a question she had hesitated to voice before. "Mostly," he admitted. "Ranch hands come and go, but this land, it keeps you company if you listen. And now, it seems, you've come along." Clara's heart skipped. She wasn't sure why his words affected her so deeply, but she felt the bond of trust forming, an unspoken understanding between two people who had survived hardship in very different ways. As dusk approached, they returned to the house. Clara took a moment to look around the cozy rooms, the fire now roaring, and the small Christmas tree twinkling in the corner. For the first time since the depot, she felt a sense of permanence. This was not a temporary refuge, it could be a home. That evening, they shared a quiet dinner. Daniel spoke little, letting the warmth of shared food and simple conversation fill the space. Clara found herself laughing, telling stories of the children she had taught, and he listened, genuinely engaged. For the first time, Clara realized that she wasn't just surviving the storm, she was thriving in its aftermath. The fear that had gripped her in the depot was replaced with something new: trust, connection, and the quiet, steady feeling that she had found someone who would not let her face life alone again. As she settled by the fire later that night, Clara thought about Daniel, the man who had rescued her, who had offered her more than safety, who had quietly, without fanfare, begun to change the course of her life. She closed her eyes and whispered a soft prayer of gratitude. Outside, snow fell gently on the ranch, blanketing the world in white. Inside, a new warmth had taken root, one that would not fade with the night. Christmas morning dawned crisp and clear. The storm had passed, leaving a pristine blanket of snow that sparkled in the sunlight. Clara woke early, the warmth of the guest room wrapping around her like a gentle embrace. The previous night's fear and uncertainty felt distant, replaced by a cautious excitement. She descended the stairs to find Daniel already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. The smell of sizzling bacon, fresh bread, and brewed coffee filled the air, creating a homely atmosphere that made her heart swell. "Good morning," Daniel greeted, his eyes soft as they met hers. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," Clara replied, smiling genuinely for the first time since arriving at the depot. They ate together in comfortable silence for a few moments, the quiet only broken by the occasional crackle of the fire. After breakfast, Daniel handed Clara a small bundle wrapped in brown paper. "I wanted to make sure you had something for Christmas," he said. Clara untied the string carefully, revealing a simple pair of warm gloves and a wool scarf. She looked up at him, speechless. Thank you. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just wear them, and think of it as a start to a new chapter." Outside, the ranch glistened in the morning light. Daniel led her to the barn, where he had prepared a small surprise, a horse, gentle and calm, ready for her to ride. Her eyes widened. "For me?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "It's a gift. You'll need it to get to town for supplies, and I thought you might enjoy it." Clara approached the horse cautiously, feeling a mix of awe and gratitude. She had never ridden one alone before, and yet something about the ranch, the snow, and the man who had rescued her gave her courage. Daniel guided her gently into the saddle, steadying the horse until she was confident. "Ready?" he asked, smiling. Clara nodded. The horse moved forward slowly at first, then gained confidence. The wind whipped her hair back, the cold air sharp against her cheeks, and she laughed, truly laughed, feeling free and alive for the first time in weeks. Daniel rode alongside her, his presence reassuring and steady. "See," he said, "the world isn't as frightening as it seems. Not when someone believes in you." As they rode through the snow-covered fields, Clara realized that the storm at the depot had not been the end of her story, it had been the beginning. She had survived, been rescued, and now had a chance to start anew. For the first time that Christmas, Clara understood that miracles did exist, not in grand gestures or magical events, but in the quiet kindness of a stranger, in the warmth of a hearth, and in the simple acts of care that changed a life forever. She glanced at Daniel, who rode beside her, and felt a profound sense of hope. That night at the depot had felt like the end of the world, but here, in the sunlight on the snow, she realized it had been the beginning of something extraordinary. The ranch, the man who had found her, and the life she was beginning to imagine, they were her Christmas miracle. Days passed, and Clara settled into the rhythm of life on the ranch. The snow began to melt slowly under the winter sun, revealing the fences, barns, and fields that Daniel cared for so diligently. Clara helped wherever she could, feeding the horses, tending the small winter garden, mending clothes, and organizing the cabin. Each task gave her a sense of purpose, a feeling she hadn't known she'd been missing so desperately. Daniel observed quietly as she worked, never intruding unnecessarily but always present when needed. Clara grew more confident each day, learning not only the ways of the ranch but also the gentle patience that Daniel had cultivated over years of solitude. One afternoon, as she arranged firewood near the barn, she felt a shift in the air, a familiarity and security that went beyond the warmth of the fire or the stability of the walls. She realized that she wasn't just safe anymore, she felt that she belonged. Daniel approached, his eyes soft in the golden light of the afternoon sun. "You've adjusted quickly," he said. Clara smiled. "It's easier when someone shows you the way, and when they trust you to try." He nodded. "You've made this place better, Clara. Not just because of your help, but because you've brought life back into it. It's been quiet here for a long time, too quiet." Clara blushed but felt the weight of his words. She realized that in just a few days, she had not only survived the storm and the night at the depot but had also begun to leave a mark on this ranch, on this man's life. That evening, they sat together by the fire, the room glowing softly in the dim light. Clara held a cup of tea, letting it warm her hands. "I never expected to find this," she admitted. "A home, a safe place, even a friendship, or maybe something more. All of it came from one snowy night, when I thought I'd be alone forever." Daniel studied her, the flicker of the fire reflecting in his eyes. "Life has a way of surprising us," he said gently. "Sometimes it's harsh, leaving us abandoned or cold. But then, it gives us something better, something we didn't even know we needed." Clara nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. "I suppose that's the real miracle of Christmas," she whispered. "Not gifts or lights, but hope, and the people who remind us we can still trust the world." Daniel reached out, lightly resting a hand near hers on the table. "You've reminded me of that too, Clara. More than you realize." Outside, the wind had finally stilled. The ranch sat peacefully in the early evening light, a snow-glazed landscape that seemed untouched by the trials of the world beyond. For the first time, Clara allowed herself to imagine the future, not one of fear or isolation, but of warmth, trust, and connection. She had survived the depot, the storm, and the fear of being forgotten. And now, she was beginning to see that perhaps she had found her place in the world, here, on the ranch, with Daniel, and a life filled with hope she never thought possible. Clara closed her eyes, savoring the stillness, the quiet promise of belonging, and the knowledge that some nights, no matter how dark, lead to mornings brighter than we could ever imagine. Christmas night had passed, and the ranch was quiet under a star-strewn sky. Clara sat by the fire, reflecting on everything that had happened in the past few days. She had arrived at the depot weary, cold, and abandoned, and now she sat in a warm cabin, a life ahead of her that seemed filled with possibility. Daniel moved around the kitchen, preparing a small supper, though the real meal had been the breakfast earlier. He looked over at her and smiled, a quiet, knowing smile that seemed to say everything he couldn't put into words. "You've changed this place," he said gently, breaking the comfortable silence. Clara looked up, startled by the honesty in his voice. I didn't do much. You've built all of this," she said, gesturing toward the ranch, the barns, the land blanketed in snow. He shook his head. "It's more than that. You brought warmth and life back into these walls. I didn't realize how empty it felt until you arrived. You've reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten, hope." Clara's heart swelled. She had never imagined that her presence, as small and fragile as it felt at the depot, could leave such an impact. Her own hope had been rekindled, but in his words, she felt a new sense of purpose. Outside, the stars twinkled like scattered diamonds, reflecting on the snow and illuminating the ranch in soft silver. The wind whispered gently through the pines, and for the first time, the world felt safe, steady, and unbroken. Daniel approached and offered his hand. "Come with me. I want to show you something." Curious, Clara followed him outside. They walked to the edge of the fields, where the snow glistened undisturbed. Daniel stopped and gestured toward the horizon, where the first hints of dawn would soon arrive. "This," he said quietly, "is a new beginning. Not just for the land or the ranch, but for both of us. The world can be harsh, but it can also give us unexpected gifts." Clara swallowed hard, emotions welling in her chest. She realized that the storm at the depot, the long night of fear and isolation, had led her here. It had led her to a man whose kindness had saved her, and to a place that could be home. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Then don't say anything," Daniel replied with a soft chuckle. "Just stay. Build something here, with me." Clara looked around the snow-covered fields, the warm glow of the ranch behind her, and then back at Daniel. She took a deep breath, feeling the full weight of relief, gratitude, and the budding excitement of possibility. "I'll stay," she said simply, but with certainty. A quiet smile spread across Daniel's face, and for the first time in a long while, both of them felt the full promise of the future. The storm had passed. The night of fear had ended. And on this Christmas night, in a quiet ranch in the snow, Clara had found not only warmth and safety, but a place to belong, and perhaps, a heart to share it with. Outside, the stars sparkled over the ranch, the snow glimmered like a promise, and inside, a fire burned steadily. A new chapter had begun.